Hello everyone. December 2024 electricity price outlook. We're going to talk about extreme prices because of the EU green madness. It's going to be very expensive to charge your car some days. And we're going to talk about flow-based market coupling, how that is causing Northern Scandinavia to see significant higher electricity prices. Hello everyone. My name is Ivan Fersvegon. I'm head of energy analysis and trading at the company TradeWpower. I'm the founder of the company. I have a PhD in meteorology and also extensive experience as a production planner, power trader, and power analyst. You can please add me to your LinkedIn network. I'm running my services through this webpage, TradeWpower.no, and you find more information about it there. So every day I present an analysis to clients based on global warming's effect on energy weather, how selective historical years are representing this year's front quarter outlook. And then we go through forecast every day to see if today's forecasts are in line with expected outcome. And we make weather and fundamental trading and hedging strategies based on that. And in this work, I analyze spot prices every day. And during 6th of November 2024, I realized something I called the EU Green Madness. The EU Green Deal is what I call the EU Green Madness. Now, EU shuts down nuclear and coal power supply and replace it with wind and solar power. Now, TradeWpower's analysis shows that the wind is coming down over the EU, so the EU wind power production will underperform. They're going to get less energy out of the wind park they installed than expected. Demand increase goes closer to expected, but not installation of new wind power supply, meaning that a lot of wind parks that was planned will not be built by different reasons, but the demand increase, the use of electricity, that goes more or less like planned. So EU economy put faith in weather-sensitive energy production. The proof of the EU Green Madness took place the 6th of November 2024. Due to the shutdown of coal and nuclear power production, wind power was implemented, leading to extremely high prices when the wind was low. So this is the price curve for the 6th. This is the price curve of the 2nd December, and this is the 13th of October. So when wind was very, very low, we saw over 800 euro per megawatt in the afternoon peak. That's insane high. And that's related to that Germany shut down all their power and nuclear power production sites in 2023. Now this is a warning. These extreme high electricity prices are expected to be seen more often and will impact Scandinavia and the Baltics. Now, what we already know, and this is public available numbers and analysis, demand increase will be high towards 2030. Everyone is shifting over to electricity. What we also know is that there's too low new supply. A lot of the planned wind parks that was expected to be built will not be built, but electricity consumption is still rising as planned. And the company's analysis shows that wind will be very, very calm over Europe in longer periods in the years to come. That meaning that these market situations will occur more often. Understanding the EU Green Madness. This is important. The EU Green Madness is expected to impact electricity prices during calm weather and periods of high consumption, especially after 2026 and 2027. That's because these northern areas with those start to import power and can send cheap power southward. The EU Green Madness could be clouded by a warm, wet, and windy weather for the first quarter of 2025. That means that if you have a lot of wind and a lot of snow build-up and warmer temps than normal, many will say, okay, it was some high spot prices here and there, no dangerous. But the overall risk is still present. The problem is that we are in a low pressure year right now. As soon as wind is calm and as soon as Norway and Sweden has a control on their hydrological situation, prices will be much, much higher. So negative electricity prices may occur during spring, summer, and early fall due to temporary oversupply. However, this situation is expected to gradually improve after 2026-2027 as the green transition, along with developments in AI battery technology industry, progresses. So up to then, many could believe that the risk of the EU green madness is not that high. Okay, you have very high prices here and there or some weeks, no worries. That is not the reality as I see it at all. We have the proof already now that this is not going to go well. The EU plans to shut down additional baseload power sources and replace them mainly with wind power by 2030. Well, that tells its own story. It's going to be very, very high prices up ahead if we don't add more power supply. Spot prices, that is the base electricity price you pay every month. But then you have to add taxes, grid fees per kilowatt hours, or what we call nettleie in Norwegian, and fees. So this is the calculated at Nord Pool every day for the next day. And this was the price calculated the 29th of November 2024, and it's in euro per megawatt. And here we see that NO4 has a quite low prices, while in South Scandinavia and in South Sweden prices are relatively high, and in German prices they are quite high in Baltics. So the Nordic has a price that is dependent on hydro receivers fillings. If you have plenty of water in the mountains, in the receivers, and in snow, precipitation and inflow is important, wind power and solar power, and also Swedish and Finnish nuclear availability. Germany, on the other hand, is largely dependent on gas, LNG, and carbon prices. But in 2023 and into 2024, about 9.3 gigawatt of coal and nuclear power production was turned off in the EU. Those they had low base load supply. In Germany, turned off the 5 last nuclear power plants, replacing them with wind and solar. So prices are very sensitive to low wind, regardless of gas, LNG, coal, carbon market situation. And when these prices goes very high and a new flow-based system is added, prices will gradually come up into Scandinavia. Now Denmark 1, 2, SE3, 4, Finland, Estland, Latvia, and Lithuania are border areas between the German and Poland prices and the Nordic price mechanisms. So when it's wet and windy, these price mechanisms could push prices down into these areas, even though prices down here are very, very high. But when it's calm both places and when you have low inflow, that means that the rivers are not that intense and high, prices down south will start to influence up north. We see the traces of the EU green madness many days. Now this is for the 4th of December between 17 to 18. And we see prices down in Germany were very high, in Poland, the Baltics, and Finland, and South Sweden was very, very high. But South Norway was not that high because you have an oversupply situation with plenty of water and high inflow and so on in NO4 and SE3 and also SE2. So this hydro situation with a lot of water available and some wind and also a lot of inflow do result in limited bull effect by the prices down in Germany. We keep this in mind. We're in a low price year. There have been a lot of wind also in December. If this had a normal hydrological situation and if there were calm winds all over, these bull prices, these high prices will start to climb northward. And this image here is showing the same picture, but for Scandinavia in kroner. So this is 2.6 kroner per kilowatt hour. That's 1.1 kroner per kilowatt hour. And then you have to add taxes and fees. And it's quite unfair because taxes on 1 kroner is quite higher than taxes on 66 öre. So keep that in mind that South Scandinavia will have challenging with too high energy prices because sometimes and probably more often Germany will see quite unusual and sustainable price levels that will be pushed northward by the flow-based market coupling system, how we calculate these prices now. And we know that NO4 will be a net importer based on Statnett and the Norske Veritas analysis from 2027. And then that means that these low prices here will fade off, because the reason why the prices are so low is that we have an oversupply situation. Northern Norway have more power than what they need, so they send the power southward, limiting the risk of these extreme high prices going northward. But it is even expected South Norway to import in periods, and especially NO4 and partly S1. That means that these prices will go all the way up because they have to raise the prices above these prices in order to get the flow to go northward. The reason now is that prices are low is because this sends cheap prices southward through all the cables and connections. And that's why South Norway are so low also. So it's going to be very interesting to follow in the years to come how crazy this will be. The EU green madness, closing coal and nuclear power production and replacing them with weather-dependent solar and wind power. So EU cutting emission at any cost. We are already witnessing the risk of extreme electricity prices. And electricity costs in Denmark, Finland, Baltic, and Southern Scandinavia will be very high during low wind, regardless of gas, coal, energy prices, or the Nordic hydropower situation. The risk for significant higher and lasting high prices towards 2030 is high. So shutting down German nuclear and coal power was a grave mistake. In their effort to save the world, Germany risked driving electricity prices to unprecedented level, burdening homes and businesses in Scandinavia and the Baltics. The North Scandinavia has held prices down so far. That's what we see in the spot prices. But it's deeply concerning what will happen when North Norway and part of North Sweden becomes a net importer after 2027. And I'm not saying that. That's DNV, the Norske Veritas, and Statnett who says that. So definitely we're heading on to extremely high prices in periods. Cables and flow-based market coupling affects your electricity bill. A new flow-based calculation method for spot prices increases the risk of higher prices in Northern Scandinavia. That means German prices sets the price levels up in Scandinavia. So when Germany goes high through all these cables, South Norway and South Sweden goes high, and Baltics go high, pulling Finland up, meaning these will be pulled up. But for now, the prices are relatively low. But that will change when these areas need all the power they have and they can't send power southward. Then these errors shift directions, meaning prices shift directions, meaning price levels in north will be much, much higher in order to attract power from south and northward instead of going from north and southward. So what we will learn this winter is that the risk exists when the wind and inflow are calm, regardless of gas, LNG, coal prices, and the hydropower situations in the EU and Scandinavia. Now, I don't think politicians were provided with the correct information when they agreed to install cables and close coal and nuclear power plants in Germany. I think the power analysis was wrong, because these cables here, they influence South Scandinavia a lot more than what was analyzed before we said yes. And closing, especially the 5 nuclear power plants last year, have a significant higher price risk than what the market anticipated. Now, understanding electricity prices is difficult, so fundamental market analysis is complex. But when prices are low, we have a lot of wind and also solar. And when you have a lot of hydropower and wind and solar, prices are definitely low. And as long as nuclear availability in Sweden and Finland and also in France are good, prices follows wind, solar, and hydropower situations. So when wind is high, low prices, and you can charge your car and do your laundry. When you have low wind and low inflow, prices will be very, very high. So, weather optimized electricity outlook for December 2024. By analyzing weather, we can see electricity price variations and risks. So, windy days within each week sets the lowest prices, and weekend prices are often lower because of less consumption. What we see here is consumption temperature for the Nordic, precipitation energy, inflow, wind and solar power production, and for Germany, consumption temperature, wind power production, and solar power productions. Now, these markings are electricity prices. So, green is low prices within that week, and this is red prices where prices expected to be very high. If you look at from the 11th, 12th, and 13th of December, you see that German wind is calm, but also the 12th and 13th of December, wind is low in the Scandinavia. That means you have cold temperatures, low inflow, very low wind, especially low wind in Germany. So prices will be very, very high in South Norway, South Sweden, Finland, Baltikum, and in Germany. And that will be a test of this EU green madness again. And into next week, you see that prices will probably come down because wind is coming up. And that will be a very good day to charge your car and do your laundry and everything early next week, because that will be the lowest prices and also on Sunday. So that's how you can plan your electricity use or charging your car. And if you have to charge these days, I would have charged as little as possible. Definitely if you charge at home, because these prices will be very, very high. Now, the EU Green Madness up to 2030 and beyond. The baseload supply is already insufficient. We have too little coal and nuclear power production, and too little new power supply up to 2030 has been reported. There's a lot of wind power parks that will not be built, but they were planned to be built. So electricity consumption is rising at an unsustainable high rate. That means we have too little new supply, and the outlook for energy use, for electricity use, are too high. Electricity demand is expected to rise significantly by 2030, but new supply must align with 2030 targets, otherwise the EU green madness could lead to severe financial consequences. And the scary thing is that the company's analysis, the new normal, is that the wind is coming down over EU. So these prices heading into Southern Scandinavia could be seen more often. And they will be rare and temporary, these relatively low prices. And these negative prices will probably, and these very low price days, will probably fade off as consumption increases. And especially also when a lot of Scandinavia would now start to import as well. So, understanding global warming's effect on the climate, and the climate is weather over time, needs detailed analysis to foresee risk. So the company's analysis, the new normal, shows that EU is all in on wind power in an area with solid negative wind and precipitation trends and too little baseload supply. This area here, where the EU Green Deal is going on, where EU will save the world, is having a negative trend on wind and available precipitation. So the EU Green Madness is not fully seen in prices because in 2023 and 2024 are low pressure years. They have a lot of wind and precipitations. So these extreme price risks are not fully revealed. We see them some days, but not over a longer period of times. If, for example, January was a cold and calm month, and we saw very high prices for weeks, then of course what you would read in the media would be quite different if it's warm, wet, and windy. And please note this study does not conflict with the increase in extreme weather events, but analyzes average weather over time. And yes, global warming is a result of humans. So what I have done is I've seen the accumulated weather over time. And that accumulated weather over time for Europe shows that Europe will often see long, dry, and calm periods. And since Europe depends on wind power to produce electricity, you can end up with longer periods of calm weather, but also drought and those low hydropower production. A complete report is available at TradeWpower, and I will make a YouTube video about this analysis to explain my findings. Now, the new normal is a report divided up in two sections. The first one is just a meteorological analysis, and the second one is more like a research. What is causing the clear trends you see in the data? And the analysis shows that historical weather years can't be used to predict the outcome in the future. So like using the 80s, I don't use at all. Meaning, I can't say what happened in the 80s will be part of what happened in 2030, and those you can use the 80s to estimate what energy do you get from wind power production. In the future, you can't do that. And if you use the 90s to 20s, you will have problems with trend and variance in the data, because analysis shows that it's a trend that shifts into the data because global warming changed the atmospheric settings throughout this period, so weather here is not equal to weather there. And my analysis shows that I using the 1997 to 2021 as a normal period and using the trends and variance in that period to predict what's coming. And by that method, I see that it's a risk for longer dry and calm periods in Europe and also eventually into Scandinavia. So yes, Scandinavia has a wet and windy trend for now, but the high pressure trend you see in Europe causing the calm and dry periods and trend there will grow and expand into Scandinavia. So solar power sees a bright future. It's going to be more sunny days. And it's a warm trend all over because of global warming, but not for December and January, and that's related to polar vortex and jet stream analysis. Wind power production will drop. So if you use the 1990 to 20 as a normal period and estimate what comes in the future, the wind power will underperform. But if you use the 80s to 10 as a normal period, it will significantly underperform because the very windy 80s, they are not realistic anymore. And the dry trend is scary. Yes, you will have catastrophic floods in periods and extreme events, but accumulately over the next 10 years, it will be drier and calmer in longer periods. And with further global warming, the more dominant high pressure impact already visible at times for Scandinavia will expand, challenging traditional energy terawatt-hour-wise assumption across the region, meaning that the high pressures down in Europe, causing these dry and calm periods, will influence Scandinavia more. That means extreme electricity prices are here to stay. That's it. Thank you so much for this presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. You can contact me at this mail address or at this phone number, and please add me to your LinkedIn network. I will keep you updated later this week about new YouTube videos about this price risk in Germany, especially also into Southern Scandinavia later this week. It will be very interesting to see. Have a lovely week. Thank you so much.